where the Cardinals coming up, Cardinals have 13 games against really bad teams.
Yeah.
We're talking Tigers, Pirates, D-backs, all in last place. Then Rockies, second to last place. So they go about 2.5 weeks till they play a good team, which is the San Francisco Giants. So they have a very good opportunity to beat up on some of the bottom feeders.
I like where you're going, but beware betting on the Cardinals and with the Cardinals. Because as we've seen, the Reds can come in here to Busch Stadium. You think Cardinals are going to have a good weekend. Bang, swept, nothing, finished. Baseball is a difficult one to get a base on, I think, for a couple of reasons. I mentioned the Cardinals, but who would have thought the Cubs would have gone in the tank after sweeping the Cardinals? They've been in the tank. The Cincinnati Reds, I believe, have gone in the tank since they did that. And the Milwaukee Brewers have had the same issue this week. I mean, everybody in the Central has gone in the tank. So,
except the Pirates for a minute there.
Yeah.
It was backwards land.
100% true. So beware if you're going to. And here's another thing with Major League Baseball to see. I want to see if there's any real lines that we can determine based on them cracking down on the substances. Are we really going to see bigger numbers with guys hitting? Are we going to see more runs scored? Are we? I don't know. They're telling us that's the reason. We're going to need 3 weeks, a month to be able to really sit down and go, oh, okay, here's a trend. Are we really going to see that? I don't know.
Well, I saw a tweet, and I'll try to find it here on the fly, but there was a tweet that showed basically the difference in velocity and spin rate.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, since if you go back to Gio Gallegos and you go back to the fact that this has been a huge story, and then Major League Baseball said, okay, we're going to have our initial stage here where we're seeking information,
mm-hmm.
and then starting yesterday, you're going to start checking guys. And I'll try to find this tweet. But basically what it showed was it was a graph that showed velocity and spin rate. And velocity hadn't really changed at all. So the pitchers were throwing with the same velocity, but the spin rate plummeted. Basically, since the time that this became a huge story. So clearly, if everybody has said that 80 to 90% of pitchers use something, even if it's not spider tack, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's sunscreen and rosin, which, by the way, I don't even have a huge problem with that. I really don't.
I don't either.
But let's not pretend like it doesn't give you a little bit of an advantage. Even if the reason you use that is for grip, and I'm fine with that because I don't think hitters want to get domed up with 98 miles per hour. But even if it helps you a little bit, if everybody was using something from the low end of the spectrum, just a little sunscreen, just a little pine tar, just a little rosin, all the way up to the high-grade spider tack, which the World's Strongest Man folks were using.
Mm-hmm.
If everybody was using something, it doesn't surprise me that since this has become a big story, spin rates have plummeted. Because guys are still going to throw hard, but you're not able to manipulate the ball in the same way.
I said this on Friday, but I'm going to stick with something that it's one example. The spin rate is more the problem than velocity. I know you got 4 guys on a team now that can throw 100 miles an hour, and that's more than you've ever had, you'd say 15 years ago. But there's a kid for the Cincinnati Reds. His name's Green. Got his first AAA start last week.
Hunter Green?
Yeah, Hunter Green. He got his first AAA start Thursday night. He was clocked at 104 miles an hour, okay? And he pitched 4 innings and got a couple hits and struck out a few. And you're going, wow, this guy's throwing hard. But he gave up 4 solo home runs. So, you know what? Just because you're throwing hard doesn't mean you're unhittable. I really believe spin rate does play a role in this. But I do want to see, like I said, I want to see the numbers in 3 weeks. You know, I know they're telling us spin rate is down, but does that mean we're going to see guys hit the ball more? I don't know. We had a game. I mean, just last night, the Brewers are still bad. They only scored a run against the Diamondbacks last night. Darvish struck out, I should say 15 Dodgers struck out in that game last night. So, and everybody's being checked there. You had a game where the Cubs were shut out by the Cleveland Indians last night. The Mets played a doubleheader, and they scored 4 runs in 2 games, and the Braves scored 3 in those 2 games. So how much of a difference does it make? I don't know. We're going to find out. I still saw guys hitting into shifts and killing. Well, that happened last night in the Dodger game. Machado is like a weapon out there in short right field. There was a looper, and it was like, there he is, this big 6'3", 6'4" guy just reaching up and go, that's a hit every time except for when the shift is on a Machado sitting out there, and it's the 4th outfielder. So
that's where I just think with the shifts, I understand if people say, okay, you should be able to do whatever you want defensively. I don't agree with that, and I might agree with that if it was a little more fair in terms of if everything in baseball wasn't favoring the pitchers the last 5 to 10 years, I may go for that argument. But when you're doing anything, you're trying anything to generate offense, whether it's getting rid of sticky substances, whether it's next year, I think most people believe they're going to add the universal DH, which I think is good. And with the shifting, even somebody like Adam Wainwright, who loves to hit, by the way. Adam Wainwright has played for the Cardinals for 20 years, and he grew up watching the Braves, 2 model National League franchises. And I remember him saying a couple years back, he would like to see, he tweeted this, banning the extreme shifts, which is 3 guys on one side of the base. Now, you could say, okay, the other defender, maybe you could have a line straight up second base. Honestly, that wouldn't bother me one bit. I do think you have to open things up to help the hitters. And when I watch a baseball game, here's what would really tick me off as a hitter. Now, I think we've watched shifts so much that we understand if we see Matt Carpenter and he laces a ball into short right field, even on one hop, and they throw him out. Now, that would tick me off because that's a single your whole life.
Yeah.
That is a base hit your whole life. And if you look at the spray chart, there are probably a lot of guys over the course of baseball history that made their living on that being one of their hits. The one that would really tick me off as a hitter, because when you're taught to hit, especially growing up, it is send it back where it came from. Charlie Brown, the guy, hit it off his forehead in the sense of think right up the middle.
Right.
And so as a hitter, the one that would really tick me off is when you hit a laser line drive grounder, 1 or 2 hopper, right up the middle, which for the entirety of baseball has always been a hit. If you hit that ball hard past the pitcher and he can't react quick, that is going to go right to the center fielder, and that's a base hit. And now, almost every time that happens, it's right to a dude who is chilling on second base. By the way, the only way that's a hit is if it randomly bounces off second base and takes a crazy hop. That would tick me off, man, because you did everything that you've been taught to do your whole life. And this is before the whole launch angle thing, because hit it hard on the ground. Hit it hard, line drive right up the middle. That's always a single. That is always a single. Every time I see that same hit now, it is a 6'3" or whoever the hell is playing there. It could be the third baseman.
No, you're right. There's a lot of truth in that. It's taking some getting used to. The one question I have, and they're going to try it apparently in the minor leagues first. I want to see how this works. So you say you can't have a second baseman or shortstop on the other side of the bag. So what if they're playing up the middle, okay? Ball goes just to the shortstop side of second base. And the second baseman would have a chance. He was playing close enough he could run over and get it. Is he allowed to cross that line? You know, what's the leeway? Can he go 3 feet over? Or does he got to stop at second base and go, can't go past there. That's it. I can't touch it. You know, or the shortstop who has an easier play of, running across on it. Let's say it's a bouncer and he's going to cut across second, base to get one behind the pitcher, grab it and throw and get a guy. Is he allowed to do that now?
I think it's got to be when the ball is pitched, where you're standing. And then, once the ball is hit, because I want to see the athleticism. I want to see a third baseman ranging across the infield and making a play. But I do think if you do that, it just opens up more hitting windows for the offensive player.
I think so,
and
too.
It might not be right up the middle. Now you have a bigger hole potentially. You have your natural spots where you usually get a hit. Like I said, if you're hitting a hard ground ball, you usually had 5 ways to get a hit. You could hit it right down the line, super hard. You had your Tony Gwynn hole, right? You have your opposite, same way. Kind of like your hit and run shot to the opposite field. You have right up the middle. And now it's like, where do I get a hit? As I look out there, and they have me perfectly defended. They know exactly my tendencies. And by the way, they're going to pitch to that. I do think when people say hitters don't make any adjustments, it's really, really hard also to make adjustments. Now, don't get me wrong. Do guys sell out way too much for homers and no 2-strike approach? 100%. I've said that forever.
Yep.
That's why I love the Anthony Rizzos of the world, the Yadier Molinas of the world that are tough to strike out. I love those players. I love to see the 2-strike approach. But also, I mean, they're going to bring in, after the starter, a pitcher to totally neutralize what you do well, and they're going to defend you in a way that, to their best ability, neutralizes what you do well at the plate. It isn't easy. When these old-timers go, oh, make an adjustment, it's not the same game. You got to give them that as well.
There's a sense that, look, if a guy's throwing right and he has control, he can make you hit it in a certain area. You know, Greg Maddux, not Mike. Greg Maddux would throw the ball low and outside just enough.
5 inches outside, by the way. That was a strike.
Yeah. Just enough to where it's a strike, but if you hit it, it's a ground ball to short, right? If you're a left-handed batter, or vice versa, it's a ground ball to second if you're a right-handed batter. If you have a good pitcher like that, he's going to make you hit it where he wants you to hit it. You're going to hit it on the ground, and it's an out. And that's what made him so effective. And so, to your point, it's not as easy as you want. You know, I got to pull the ball. You know, if I'm a left-handed batter, I got to pull the ball and get the runner over. Well, Maddux is going, yeah, but it's low and outside on the corner. It's a strike. You have to hit that or stand there, and I'll get you out in 3 pitches. And all you can do is ground out the second. Runner doesn't move over, you know, at bat failed. So there is a point of it's not as easy as you think.
And with Greg Maddux, you always heard the stories about him being a real class clown, by the way, in the dugout. So the stories you would often hear about what he did in the dugout were 2 things. One of them, very funny, although you probably wouldn't like it if he did it to you. The other one, baseball related. But apparently his big thing that he loved to do was he's sitting next to you in the dugout. He's charting. He's obviously not pitching. He would love to take boogers, pick his nose, and wipe them on his teammates' pants. He thought it was hilarious. The other thing, and you'll hear all
That's
kinds of...
That's a guy thing all the way, right?
You'll hear all kinds of players talk about this. The other thing that Greg Maddux always did was he was great at, he would tell you where the ball was going to be hit. Where if he sat in the dugout, he would say, this ball, watch, it's coming into our dugout. Foul ball. Or he would say, this ball is going to be a fly out to left field, because he was such the professor. And he knew how guys were pitched. He knew if you throw this pitch and if you execute that pitch, really, I mean, unless that guy makes a mistake and guesses, he's probably going to hit it to that spot. So there's all kinds of stories of Greg Maddux about that, about him being
that's awesome,
a bit of a chotch in a good way, but also knowing exactly where the ball was going to be hit.
Yeah, and I get that he is the super exception to my point, but there are guys who can do that. Just put a ball on the spot and go, this is the only place where you can get a hit. If you beat me, I tip a cap, and if not, you know what? You're out, move on, and we get to the next one. It's interesting about the boogers.
That was his thing, man. And you can see it. He's like a child in a good way.
Yeah.
Most baseball players are, though.
Yeah.
Right? You're playing a kid's game. You should have some fun with it. National League Central, by the way, nobody has won their last game. Cubs lost. Brewers lost. Cardinals lost. The Cincinnati Reds have lost 5 in a row, and Pittsburgh losing their last game. So
Baez got benched last night.
He did.
Did you see that?
I did. And I thought that was the right thing to do.
Yeah. For those that didn't see it, Rizzo at the plate, Baez at first, 1 out, and Rizzo flies out to left field, and Baez was off and running, thinking there were 2 outs, just completely blanked, and he's all the way over to third. Left fielder gets it, throws the first, he's out, and Baez just kind of threw his arms up, and Ross, the manager, just pulled him aside and had a little conversation, said, You're done for the day. It wasn't really super animated. It was we're not going to have that anymore. Just, you're done. Go sit down. Alcantara is going to come in and play short for you. And he just kind of shook his head. He kind of had this weird look of like, okay. But that was it. I would have expected more of a backlash, but there really wasn't, was there?
That's the right thing to do, though.
Yeah.
And this is the big leagues.
Yeah.
It's Tim McCarver. This is the big leagues, man. Really, you can't do that. That is a little league type move. And I get it. It happens. Sometimes you just have a lapse. You have a brain fart. And it happens, but that's what you should do. I was listening because right before our show started, Frank and the boys were talking about that.
Yeah.
So, of course, you spin it too. What would Mike Schilt do in that situation? And by the way,
Javi
Baez
are playing hard.
Well, I was laughing because, by the way, Javi Baez is a stud. He's one of their studs.
He is.
Rizzo, Bryant, Javi Baez. The fact that he did that to Javi Baez, I'm guessing he would probably do that to his other superstars if they had that lapse in judgment. But then I was thinking, what if Yachty did that? And Yachty is such a cerebral baseball player.
Yeah.
But look, everybody has those moments where you just space out. God knows I do it. And if you play baseball for 17, 20 years in the majors, you're going to have one of those times.
Yeah.
Hell, maybe on the scoreboard, the outs are wrong. Whatever, you forget. There was a play, it was reviewed. That happens. I was kind of chuckling. Because if you're the manager, you got to do that. But what if it's Yachty?
I think if it's Yachty, you just turn your cheek and go the other way. Part of it, too, is because it was Baez, who's a little, what's the right word?
A little spacey.
A little spacey. Yeah, that's the perfect word for it. He gets a little spacey. And even if you watched his body language as it happened, okay, he's hung out to dry. He just threw his arms up and like, I don't know. I messed that up. He didn't even hustle to get back. He just kind of, walked, turned, and like, I don't know. So that probably didn't help at least the look of things.
Yeah.
But, if it was Yachty, I really don't think anything would have been done other than, Yachty just forgot. He works hard. He plays hard. He's one of our leaders. He messed up. We move on. By the way, did you see the guy threw out at third base on an attempted steal? That's what we'll be talking about. Not he forgot how many outs there were.
Yeah, I do think, though, and we talked for about 30 minutes yesterday, 35 minutes about Mike Schilt and his post games and what's going on and all that. I do think Mike Schilt has a good grasp of how fans think and feel. So I do think that he gets it, that people are complaining about him in some of his post games being maybe too soft on his guys. I promise you he's aware of that. And if you go back a couple years, 2019, if you remember, and I'm not down at the ballpark, well, during COVID, for TV purposes, there's just not, I hate to say it, there's not a lot of value with the way they do interviews.
Right.
Unless you're going live. Now, this is going to change and we'll get back. But usually we're at every single Cardinals home game.
Mm-hmm.
So that 2019 season, if you remember, he had kind of one of those epic rants. And I asked him a question which was not even controversial in any way. It was the day the Blues were there. The Blues had won the Cup. Remember, the Blues are there, and it's Pat Maroon, and I think it was Petro. They brought the Cup. They had all the pictures with the World Series trophy and the Cup, and Yachty's taking pictures, and Waino's taking pictures. And the Cardinals weren't doing great that year. They're probably around where they are right now. And I just asked him, do you draw motivation from the Blues and their run and the Stanley Cup and all that energy coming here? And it wasn't like he responded real terse, but he kind of said, we're the Cardinals. I mean, they learn from us, we learn from them. But I do think it was a role reversal because for years, everybody was always compared to the Cardinals. Yep. If you were the Rams, if you were the Blues, the Cardinals were up here. And by the way, they still are, but the Cardinals hadn't won a championship since 2011. The Blues won. And he said it in a way where, well, I think they learned from us as well. And he went on this long rant, and it was a really good soundbite. And he said, I heard people call us boring. And I think that was because that was kind of a radio or social media narrative. He said, you guys complain. And he didn't say, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, there was always complaints about not playing clean baseball, which at the end of the Matheny era
was not.
And so they had cleaned that up. And so my overall point, I'm really rambling, is I think he understands how people are talking about him. Okay, he's married now. You got friends, even if they're on the road. You got friends and allies that are on social media, that are listening to the radio, and who cares what we say? But I do think they have an idea, or columnists, what people are writing about, right?
He's a proud individual. He does 100%. Care about, and he's aware how people perceive him. I mean, I really believe that's why he's continuing to play. Because, look, he's a proud man who really wants people to remember him as, hey, he's one of the best ever. And he's very aware of his legacy and all of these little milestones that we see him get. He's aware of all of that. He doesn't talk about it, but he's aware of it. You can just go back to when the Gold Gloves were given out this year. Yachty's like, hey, I'm one of the best catchers, and I'm the best catcher in baseball here. I didn't get the Gold Glove, but I'm still the best there is. I'm going to go prove it. And I think that is, again, he's showing it again. Hey, I'm here to prove to you I'm still as good. So to your point, that's Yachty. But if it did happen to Yachty, like we said with Baez, I think we'd all just go, okay, we'll move on.
It would be a funny situation because Mike Schultz actually should bench any player that does that. I don't care if it's Lars Nootbaar, by the way, called up today, or Yadier Molina, 20-year player. I understand sometimes there's different rules for different players, but you should govern everybody the same. And that would be a funny situation because it would be really, really awkward. We all know that. And you mentioned Yachty. I think, first of all, he's still playing really, really well. You mentioned the defense. He's throwing out half the guys that run. He's throwing guys out from his knees on 75-mile-an-hour curveballs. I mean, that's freaking amazing. And then last week, the Cardinals sent out the release about Yachty and Waino and their ranks, not just amongst Cardinals history, but for Yachty. I mean, of course, he's up there number one, everything for catchers, but he's climbing all the ranks of just position players with the Cardinals. He's climbing all the ranks of current catchers and probably number one in most. And then look at all time. Every time Yachty plays another 5, 10, 15 games, another year, another 2 years, you look at all those categories, whether it's games caught, innings caught, hits for a catcher, RBIs, and he's passing the likes of Gary Carter and Johnny Bench in some of these, not all of them, but in some of these, whether it's games caught, innings caught, hits. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's going to be in the top 5-ish, top 10, and probably most of these categories for catchers all time in the 100 and whatever, 40, 50 years of baseball. He's going to be top 10-ish in probably almost every single category.
Was it this weekend where he passed Johnny Bench for most hits as a catcher, or passed Johnny Bench hits as a catcher? I think is the one that I remember this weekend. Johnny Bench, for me, was the
benchmark.
He is the guy you put up there. Pudge is right there too, but Bench was always the guy growing up. Best catcher ever, best catcher ever, best catcher ever. For Yachty to be in that conversation, and I get that Yachty played more years as a catcher than Johnny Bench, but that's also part of it. You know, it's a grueling position. To be able to do that is part of it. That's what makes Pudge part of his legacy so great. He's done it more than anybody, and he did it at such a high level. For Yachty to be in that conversation, and for me, when I said, wow, he passed Johnny Bench, I watch him, and sometimes you take it for granted, right? When you see somebody every day, you go, wow. When you're in that category, that's superstar category right there, all-time great category.
And it's funny you say that about, I think there's a narrative when we talk about the Hall of Fame, and some folks will call these guys stat accumulators or stat collectors, where maybe they're not elite MVP in their prime, but you get the 500 homers or the 3,000 hits because you played 17, 19, 21 years. And I feel like a lot of Hall of Fame voters look at that in a negative way. I look at that the exact opposite. You have to be good to play 20 years. And look, I understand at the end you might have a big contract and they're playing you because of the contract, but usually guys don't play 17 years unless they're really, really good. And yeah, maybe you were never an MVP, but if you were the 10th best hitter in the National League for, I don't know, 8 years, and then you were the 15th best for 7 years, and you look up and the guy played 20 years, and he averaged 26 homers and 89 RBIs, that means you were really, really good for a long time, which, again, it ain't easy. It ain't easy when you play catcher, shortstop, center field, with all the ways you can get injured, playing every day, playing in St. Louis back in the day when you're playing on turf, or playing every day in 100 degrees. I give guys credit for being able to play longer, whereas I think some voters look at that as, oh, they're just they're racking up the stats.
Yeah, the Hall of Fame's an interesting get because a lot of times the argument is, were you one of the 5 best players at your position or in your era? And if you weren't, you're automatically out. And to your point, well, somebody might have only played 15 years or like 12, let's say 12. And for 9 of those, he was the best player in the league, but didn't put up 3,000 hits. Oh, he's in. He was the best player I ever saw at that era. Okay. But let's take a guy who's not in that. Jim Cott played a long, long time and was very, very good. A very good athlete. He won, I don't know how many Gold Gloves as a pitcher. I don't think he got the 300 wins, but he's right there or close. Just because of longevity shouldn't be taken against him. He got close enough. We're never going to see anybody get to 250, I don't think, ever again in terms of wins. And I know it's valued differently. But you got to get credit for that, man. And to your point, some guys, it's just a weird situation. I just think some guys, they get overlooked for the wrong reasons, like you said.
Yeah, Jim Cott, 283 wins.
Okay, yeah, I knew he was close.
Pitched for 25 years to a 3.45 ERA for his entire career and threw 4,500 innings. Now, didn't strike out a ton, but as you mentioned, a ton of Gold Gloves. I mean, he was 5th in the MVP one year. Couple, good finishes, 4th in the Cy Young. Yeah, so I get it. That's a long time, but again, to be a big leaguer till you're 44 years old is not easy.
No.
Even if you're a junk balling reliever. I mean, his last year, he threw to a 3.89 ERA. Out of the bullpen.
Yeah. Look, just a thought on that. I think he should get in at some point, but because he wasn't the best pitcher of his era at any point in time, he was pretty consistent, though, for 20-something years. That should get you in at some point. So.
He probably will, too. I think, and I'm not saying I agree with this, but I think all fan bases want their borderline guys in, and you're starting to see basically everyone that's borderline get in. And I don't even really care. Now, do you want it to be the best of the best? Whatever. But what do I care if a baseball player who's now 80, and I'm not talking about Jim Cott, but whoever.
Right.
If this guy's a borderline Hall of Famer, and he might die in the next 5 years, I mean, why the hell not? What do I care? Do I want to be the guy, if he's that close anyway, do I want to really hold him back from making the Hall of Fame and having a great moment with his family before he dies? I just don't care that much.
Richie Allen's a perfect example. Died before he's going in, but he just passed away. He'll never get this, and he should have been in before that. So, good examples.
Okay, how about one of the most anticipated prospects in baseball making his debut tonight? Lars Nootbaar. No, I'm just kidding. It's actually Wander Franco.
Yeah, he didn't play last night, right? Because he just got called up.
Just got called up. So Wander Franco, the consensus number 1 prospect in all of baseball the last 2 years, shortstop, Rays, 20 years old, born in 2001. And his stats at Durham this year, 315 average, 367 on base, 586 slug, 7 homers, and 35 RBI in 39 games. And I was half kidding, but Lars Nootbaar's numbers were actually really good too. 329 for Lars Nootbaar, 430, 557, 5 homers, 17 RBI for Mr. Nootbaar in 22 games. But I think everybody's excited to see Wander Franco, who's discussed as a generational talent. Not just the top prospect this year, but a guy he's talked about with the Joe Mauers and the Ken Griffey's about a guy who could be just an unbelievable Hall of Fame type talent.
I'm looking forward to watching him play. He's number 1 on the list for a reason.